everybody. This is Gene, the Enjoyment Coach from Pealed Back. As always, we are here with another episode on Wednesday of LiveCast Conversations With. This is episode 30, and my guest today is Kim Hoyer. Kim is the CEO and founder of Factor X Solutions and Stand Up Now. He's in the business of helping individuals and entrepreneur-minded organizations accomplish anything they set their minds to. He helps people dream, plan, and do big things fast. Kim works globally to secure results and share insights on personal and corporate advancements, sales, marketing, strategic planning, and human happiness. He's best known for his trademark, Pursuits Advancement Systems, which is a framework that helps individuals and teams move beyond the ordinary and hit whatever dreams and goals they set for themselves. This methodology combines dreaming, planning, and doing, and rests on the foundation of keeping people happy and productive in that order. Kim's approach combines fun, flexibility, attention to detail, and an entrepreneurial fun style. He and his team are committed to providing unique and innovative programs and hands-on solutions based on solid strategic thinking and meticulous attention to detail. He has a history of producing strong results for individuals, Fortune 500 clients, nonprofits, schools, colleges, and universities. Kim.
Yes, sir.
Lots of great accolades there, and my words can only do you half justice. I'm looking forward to this conversation today.
Yeah, well, no, thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. As you know, we met just before they shut the COVID curtain down. We were at a opening of a business accelerator, and we met, and I think we talked for 2 or 3 hours. So this is part two.
Yeah, that was at the Big Bear thing. Yeah, totally wasn't expecting to stay as long, and then we just ended up crushing out a great conversation around masterminds and around coaching and doing consulting work and in the Okanagan. Yeah, that was before it got a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it has, but it's all unfolded as it was supposed to, and here we are, and lots of opportunity as always. And
for sure. So tell us a little bit about your Foundation X and the Stand Up Now. So what is it exactly that you're bringing to people?
Well, I'll tell you kind of a little bit of the journey, and then I'll be as brief as I can. And if you want to go a little deeper, we can. But essentially, 100 years ago, it was like 1999 in Calgary. I started Factor X Solutions, which was an organization that guaranteed sales results to a company of any size. So whatever the target they said they wanted to hit, we guarantee it. And what that forced me to do, it was kind of like having 2 or 3 guns to my head, in that I had to assemble teams, I had to work with their teams, I had to put in a bunch of technology, because the way I structured the agreements is that if we didn't hit the target, I didn't get paid. So because of that, it forced me to get really systematic about growing companies. So essentially the pursuit system, or at least the first variation of it, essentially said, you can do anything you want in the world. If you got the right plan, you got the right people on the team, you're getting the right performance out of those people, and then you're promoting it like crazy internally to keep people excited and on task and motivated to come to work every day, and then promote it externally to your customers to say, hey, here's the new us, buy it type of thing. Right. And how that turned into Stand Up Now. So I still do that. I still do turnarounds and jump starts for companies. So a turnaround obviously would be a company of any size that's in trouble, and we get them out of trouble. And a jumpstart would be a healthy company that just wants to sell a lot.
Right.
But what I noticed was that over the years, what I noticed is the problem was sometimes the recipe. Like they didn't know how to do their marketing, or they didn't know how social media worked, or they didn't, they just didn't have a plan together, and stuff, whatever. That was sometimes the plan. That just needed to know what to do and what the steps, and they needed some confidence to do that. But more than not, it was actually more just the junk in their head, right? They didn't think they could do it, or they thought that competitor was too big, or they thought the market had changed too much. And so then I started spending more and more of my time, as opposed to doing marketing calendars and sales training, of which I always did some of that. I started trying to more get into people's brains, right from the executives down to the salespeople, down to the marketing, social media coordinators, whatever, and just find out why they were limiting themselves, right? So anyway, so essentially that in my mind, I thought, man, I'd like to keep doing turnarounds because they're so much fun. And it's, important work. Obviously, you're helping people stay afloat. Yeah. But it was more that personal development part that appealed to me. So anyway, so Stand Up Now is still about growing your company, but or actually you don't have to have a company. It could be you just have a dream.
Right.
And so I essentially use the same systems and procedures and, models that I've built over the years in concert with clients, and sort of said, hey, what's your dream? Let's get that out of your head. Let's find out why you're not actioning that. What are you afraid of? What kind of stories are you telling yourself? And then we rewrite those scripts, and mixed with coming up with plans and whatnot, and making it happen.
Right. So it sounds like it's very much about giving these people a space to dare to dream, and then actually like getting into like what are the limiting beliefs that they're having that's holding them back from actually taking action towards that dream.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Gene, the funny thing is, some people, almost everyone has a dream. Sometimes you got to knock on the door well to get them to even say it.
Yeah.
But once you get them going, and like you kind of said, believing in themselves, it's really downhill in a good way from there, right? It's once you get people moving and feeling a little bit steady on their legs, and get them in a group of people that's not going to laugh at them, that's taken on something big themselves. And big, by the way, doesn't mean you got to be, going to Mars or something like that.
That's a good thing, Elon, but yeah,
exactly. But it could be just something bigger than you've done before, right? So,
yeah. Well, and being, there's a couple things that are interesting around that. Is one, first, the topic of around like knocking on that door to eventually get somebody to be like, here's my dream, right? Because the reason they've shut that door on themselves is their stories and their mind is telling them never going to happen, and be like, what about all this, rejection, fear, and shame, and everything else that may go along? In my mind, all I hear is an old Adam Sandler skit, and the mom going, they're all going to laugh at you. Be like, no, we're going to actually open this door and give you the permission to maybe accept their laughter, but start finding those right people. So like, what is that like, trying to pull that dream out of somebody that's been not giving themselves permission or feel that it's appropriate to dream, even if regardless of what big means to them?
Yeah, well, it's one of my favorite things to do in the world. Essentially, I got lots of different formats for it, but essentially I pull out a timeline. Sometimes I do with a spreadsheet. Sometimes I, do with an app, but lots of different, sometimes that's, just a big whiteboard. And we just kind of say, hey, Gene, when were you born? Click. What year was that? What year is it now? Just kind of walk me through your life and just talk to me about, what are big positive things in your life and what are big negative things in your life. And then we kind of just zip through that, and you can do that for 8 hours. You can do that for 30 hours. You can do that in an hour, right? It depends on the person and how deep they want to go. And then you start circling these things, and then you break them down, right? I've got I can't even remember what I call it, freedom process, I guess. But essentially we just kind of figure out, hey, what did you tell yourself about that when that happened, a good thing or a bad thing?
Right.
And when that happened, what did you tell yourself that meant? Did that limit you in any way? Did it put you in a cage in any way? Or did it, if it was a good thing, do you draw on that, and what happened, and remind them of that? And then you get to the point where they came up with a dream and then you say, what happened to that? And then when you tie together some of their great experiences, some of their bad experiences, and you go deep on these things and reconstruct them for them and help them reframe them in kind of not standard, but kind of a modified cognitive behavioral therapy. And I'm not a therapist, right? I'm just kind of a get it done guy.
Yeah.
Read lots of that stuff though. But anyway, and then you start getting them to talk about it. And then the great news is they've told you these stories, and they know that they've told you these stories, and then you start reminding them as you're working with them. So, and to me, there's one-on-one coaching, which is fine. I do some of that, but what really gets me going, and you already talked about masterminds, is getting people in a group of, could be 4 people, 8 people, no more than 12 people, and sort of just doing life together, right? Doing business together, and finding out what's limiting them and what they're thinking about. Sometimes it's just practical resources they need. It's not a mental limitation. They just don't know how to do live casting, right? And they don't know what StreamYard is, so they just need something like that, right? But anyway, it's so that's your question was, what's the process like? That's sort of how it works for me, and some people want to go really deep, and some people want to keep it shallow, and you just take them where they are and kind of walk them through it, and keep shining a light on their dream and making that more real and getting them to describe it.
Yeah.
And then get going.
Right. So when you're shining that light, that light can amplify things. So when you've got on that positive side, you can light it all up and be like, hey, look at the actual image that this thing casts when you're not putting the shadows around it. It's incredible. You can get really inspired about that. Get them. I imagine there's part about visualizing it again and being in it and living it. On the flip side, I think, using that light analogy there, those dark sides of those stories, they like to hide in all kinds of corners and attack. When you shine that big light on it, all of a sudden be like, you got nowhere to hide. How scary is this thing? You're like, oh, it's actually just a cute little monster. It's not a big scary beast after all.
Well, you bring up this is not my own term for it. Lots of people call it the voice, or the inner critic, or the watcher, and it depends on what tradition you come from, right? But that voice in your head, it's bizarre that we go to school for anywhere from 12 to 15 years or whatever it is, and there are more, I guess, for people that go to the limit. But we don't talk a whole lot about that voice in our head, right? Like that, and how it can either be a cheerleader, or it can be something from hell, right? Who just keeps you down, and you feed one or the other, and you've got, I'm sure, your own experiences with your own voice, but it's either very helpful or very unhelpful.
Yeah.
And you get people tuned in with that and listening to that. And I don't know if you've done much reading or thinking about that voice in your head, but what you'll find is that you can't shut it up.
No, it's constant.
Yeah, but you can just sort of listen to it and thank it for sharing, and continue on the path, and essentially flip what it's saying and reframe it, and go forward.
Yeah, one of those ways I view that, so that's the subconscious just it's doing its job. Its job is to keep us at what we've told it as the status. This is status quo. And so it's going to say all those things that keep us there. If we've told it and reconfirmed all these stories of we're not good enough, and we can never succeed, we're never going to be wealthy, we're never going to find somebody. Well, it goes, oh, well, we're not wealthy, we're never going to succeed, so I'm going to make sure that we keep this version going. It doesn't care if it's good or bad. It just is. I view it as a big supercomputer, right? So the more data you feed into it, the more it's just going to go, oh, here's all the matches, and we're constantly on the lookout for everything that's going to confirm what you told us we should be looking for.
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot of work actually to feed back in the new data that you want it to be looking for. Be actually, we like change. Actually, we like being wealthy, and this is what wealthy means, and here's a great example of it. And it gets a little bit that vibrational going, oh, this is different, until it shakes out going, oh, okay, we can accept this. We will start moving forward again.
Yeah, this is starting to feel safe again. And to me, people that are really introspective and really into personal development, this is nothing new for us, right? but for people that might be listening, if you haven't really paid attention to what you're talking about to yourself and how you're talking to yourself all day, you've got a gold mine there of learning, and you can access that thinking and flip it around. And second time, I guess we're talking about masterminds, but that's why I love masterminds. And you don't have to join our mastermind, or you don't even have to join our mastermind. You just need a friend, right? Yeah. I personally like masterminds because it's a little more structured, and you can have multiple people with multiple perspectives. But the great thing is you can't you can't really hide from your dream anymore, right? You're in a group of people that are just as committed as you. Some actually are more and pulling you along, and you're more committed to your dream than other people. You're pulling them along, and you're watching other people, and you're saying, "Hey, why is that guy so scared? Hey, I thought Gene was going to start his podcast. Why didn't he start it?" And then the light comes around to you, Kim. What do you do? And I thought you were going to start a podcast, or I thought you were going to hire another employee or expand or start doing more of this or more of that, right? And so that's why, to me, it's not just Sun, but my whole life, it seems to be focusing on dream, plan, and do, which is something I've been saying for 20 years. But I've added the together after it, right? So it's dream, plan, do. That's sort of my approach to everything. Yeah. But then it's the together, and that's the part I was personally missing, right? I'm just like, well, I don't really want to put it out there because then they'll expect I have to do it, and soon I'd almost sooner have started a little pretend company, right? Where I'm making money and I've got some people working with me, and it's great. But man, if they knew the real dream I had, they wouldn't realize how miserable I was at achieving my dream, right? But again, you get in front of people, 2 or 3 people, 8 people, 10 people, whatever it is, and it's just night and day with how much easier life is if you're doing it together.
Oh, 100%. I've been part of many masterminds, and it's incredible the things that they can pull out and go along with it. Like, for anybody who's never been to a mastermind or even heard of it and think maybe we're talking about some evil lair type stuff, like what would you how would you describe the mastermind to a 5-year-old?
What I would say to the 5-year-old is essentially it's a bunch of people getting around a table, and it's either a digital table and something like we're on now, or it's a real table. And let's just say it's 8 people, and you know what the overall goals are of each of the 8 people. And then depending on how often you meet, sometimes masterminds meet every week. That's how I like to do them. Some people meet every month. Some people meet every quarter. And then essentially, if you've got big issues, a big issue you want to deal with, you bring that to the leader of the mastermind, and then he or she, whoever that facilitator is, puts that on the table and says, "Hey guys, Jennifer today is she's never signed a lease before, a major commercial lease for 5 years, and she doesn't understand the terminology, and she doesn't understand what a leasehold improvement is." Now I'm leaving the 5-year-old behind, sorry, but it's so then Jennifer's got the floor, and she describes what she wants to know and what she thinks she knows and where she's struggling a bit, and then from personal experience, everyone zips around the table and tells Jennifer from their experience what she needs to know. They say, "Hey, call my lawyer," or they say, "Call this leasing agent," or "I know how you felt, but it's really pretty easy to do a lease. There's A, B, and C." And then she's sort of on the hot seat, and then someone else goes, right? Yeah. So that's essentially how that's a very standard way of doing a mastermind. Depending on how much time you've got, if some people do them all day, so then everyone gets to go for the day. But I kind of just like it every week, so it's something that's a little more fluid.
Right. So I've used the term like somebody gets to be in the hot seat. So it kind of sounds like 1 or 2 people get to be in the hot seats in that weekly breakdown, and they get the light shined on them for a very specific time. Sometimes a very uncomfortable time, but it's some of the best growth.
Oh yeah, no, tough question. So 2 big components. One is kind of the hot seat, or that's a good name for it. And the second component is just an update from everybody, right? Yeah. So everybody at the beginning just kind of gives a 1-minute update about, "Hey, this is what's new for me. I got my loan got approved, or I hired somebody, or I'm redoing my website," or whatever it is. And then at the end, a little wrinkle that I threw in that people like is that at the end of every session, we say, "Hey, the biggest thing I can do to move ahead this week is that." And then of course I write all that down, and then if people if they need any help with anything, so they might not need to be on the hot seat, but at the end of the meeting, they might just say, "Hey, if anyone has a good lawyer that can do software contracts, send them my way, right? So then people are kind of working for each other during the week.
Yeah. So it's a bit of your structure is around, your tabletop updates, getting that hot seat going on, and then the request for support outside of it, or you maybe even like just support one another, right? Be like,
Yeah.
hey, I need a lawyer, or who wants to grab coffee, or whatever it may be. But then everybody has like a quick end to make an ask.
Yeah. So that's the basic format. I mean, I try to layer on. That's if you got the Wikipedia, they kind of describe it sort of like we did. I layered on a few extra things. Like everyone's got a 1-page business plan that we review every quarter, and a few other little KPIs, key performance indicators that I keep track of people. And for some people that's overkill, so we don't do that with them. But for the people that want the full deal and who really want to be be really methodical about their growth, that's one way of doing it. Some people aren't into that, so that's fine.
Well, I think actually, like what that sparks for me is a question around. You talk about the people that have their business plan and their stuff together. Like, if I was new to masterminding and hearing all this, and I'm thinking, man, I don't have my shit together. Like, can I even join this? Am I taking away from somebody's experience? So, like, does somebody that's still trying to figure their world out, is masterminding a good fit for them?
You're a smart guy. Yeah. And so you just unlocked a really big problem with some masterminds, which is they throw everyone together. And to me, I don't think that's a good idea. We try to match people at different levels together, right? Because the woman who's, running a Fortune 500 business, or, running across 4 different jurisdictions and has 500 employees, she doesn't get a lot from the person who's starting the dog walking company, right? And vice versa, right? So we try to match people just based on whether they're just starting, or they're in the middle, or they're at a higher level. It's not like they can't work the other way. It's usually the people more experienced that are doing all the giving. And if that's where they are in their career, that's awesome, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that kind of does answer that. Is like to do them from a good experience would be that they have to be a bit of a curated group, right? Because there's an evolution, and just like everything else, everything has a season or a chapter. It's like you may get to a point with your mastermind group where you're like, actually, I need to evolve and maybe step into another one, right?
Yep. And that's how it works. People, they're not challenged anymore, or maybe they're great people and they're great conversations, but personally, I'd like to be something in with a bunch of other software entrepreneurs, right? Just because we have more of the same issues where we're getting bought out, or how do we do evaluation on ourselves, or how do you keep really good programmers engaged, that type of thing, right? So there's some masterminds that are very specialized of just certain industries, and some and there's advantages and disadvantages to that. And some masterminds, they're spread out. You got someone running a bakery, and someone who's doing a software company, and someone's got a heating and cooling company. Those work well too. The great thing about those is you get less groupthink, right? you get the guy from the heating and cooling company saying to the software guy, hey, I'm not exactly sure what I'm talking about, but this is how we do it. And the guy goes, what? And so you just get that totally different perspective, which is nice.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of like, I don't know if you've ever read any of Jay Abraham's stuff, but he always talks about looking into other industries to see what they're doing, right? So being able to put the different we'll call them thought leaders around the table, or people that are looking to grow in those other industries, who knows what may happen, right? You could have, like in that heating and cooling industry, something that they just take for granted. They're like, oh yeah, we just do this. This is easy. Software guy walks in and just goes, you just revolutionized my business. You just gave me an edge. Like, why did no one ever think about this? And they're like, well, we did. Just not in your industry, right? Like that group think can be poisonous. It can be the thing that can almost be the group thing that holds everybody back. Be like, well, no one else is doing that, so why would we?
Yeah, you got me thinking actually about something else that might be interesting for people, and that is the people that tend to stay out of masterminds until they stumble into them by accident are really smart people, because they do okay on their own.
Yeah.
And they like to make their own mistakes, and then they've done well, right? But they don't they've never tried the other side, right? So get into a group of 8 with 8 other people and they're all as smart as you. It goes a lot faster.
Oh, big time, right?
You're not making this kind of the same mistakes over and over again, or you just they're unnecessary mistakes.
Right. There's no need to reinvent the wheel, especially if you're going to be open to hearing it and open to the feedback. And I think that sometimes that's the hard part, right? Is like when that light's being put back on you and you're getting that feedback and building up that group trust to be like, it's okay, we love you. Now we're going to kind of tear into you a little bit because you keep saying the same thing, or you're not playing. We know what level you can play to. Why are you refusing to play to that top level?
Yep.
Because we see something in you. We want to spark that out of you.
Yep.
And another part, like especially in this time, like over this last year where everyone's been working from home or a lot of people are starting new things, be like, it can be lonely to start something new and go on your own.
On that note, and anyone's welcome to reach out to me if they want to do this. I don't charge anything for what I'm about to describe. But I bought the software and I just started something that isn't my own invention in terms of concept, but a virtual, my brain's not working here, a virtual co-workspace, right?
Okay.
So I bought a subscription to AirMeet, and essentially what's really cool about AirMeet is it's got a lounge, right, where there's little virtual tables. And I just actually finished a session just an hour ago, but essentially we meet in there. And some of the groups are unstructured, so it's just 8 people with their videos on, working, and they don't feel alone. So that's fine. The way I like to do them is a structure I call SAW, which is shut up and work. That's what it stands for. But essentially, we start the 45-minute session or the hour session, and essentially, Eugene, you'd say what you want to get done in the next 45 minutes, and I say what I want to get done. And we leave the cameras on, turn off the audio. And then we just work. And then some people peel off and do little coffee breaks after if they just kind of want some human interaction. But it's kind of nice to know, especially it's nice anytime, even forget about COVID, but especially in COVID, for people that aren't used to working remotely. I've been doing it for years, but for people where it's new to them, it's just nice that you're not alone, right? The number one search query in the internet is some variation on the fact that people are bothered by the fact that they're alone, right? And we're not alone. We're only alone if we take ourselves, out. And so anyway, lots of opportunities. There's been obviously more bad than good that's come out of COVID, but some of the great things are people plugging in with other people from around the world or around their community, and realizing that you can anyway, the world's a lot smaller than you thought.
Oh yeah, well that's I snickered when you said shut up and work, but I love that idea of being able to sit around and be like, all right, we've got this 45-minute focus time, turn everything else off, and let's just work our faces off, see what we produce, and then grab a water, grab a coffee, tea.
Yep.
And redo it. Like that's some of the most productive time. I just before this call, I was having another call with a colleague and a good friend of mine, and we were talking about like the disruption value to not having that productive time, being able to make it and be like, look, no one gets to bug me between like 1 and 3 because this is my SAW time, and here's what I'm going to go accomplish. And then it's almost like you have this built-in accountability group where. Now you can't if I was doing it, be like, oh man, I don't want to let Kim down. I said I was going to do this, so now I have to go do it.
So I don't, for those of us, the people in your audience that are distracted, and I'm heavily distracted at the best times, but it really helps me because even though, of course, you can't jump in and see what I'm working on, and I'm not a complete kid, like I can focus on my task a lot of the time. But once you tend to pick the ones that I just call tough ones, right? What's the thing that's bugging you the most, right? I got to finish my taxes, or I've got to do my invoicing, or whatever it is, right? Things I don't like doing. And it's nice. So whether there's 2 people in the little saw session, or there's, 6, whatever, when I say, hey, I'm going to get my invoicing done, and then everyone mutes their mic, you start your little tomato timer if you want.
Yeah.
And then, suddenly, a text comes in, or Snapchat, or an email comes in, or while you're researching something, you see something, and then you go, oh, I'll just go look at that, right? So again, if you're highly distracted, like I can be often, it really helps to go, hang on a second, Gene's working on this, Bob's working on that, Mary's working on that, and I'm going to lie to them in 45 minutes, because that's the other thing. At the end of the session, it's all cordial, right? But we just say, hey, Gene, how'd you do? Oh, man. I ended up playing a video game, or whatever, right? And that's cool if that happens. But on the other hand, why the heck are you here then?
Yeah.
and I'd argue, if you're always doing video games, and I love video games, by the way, but if that's what you're doing with most of the time, then I contend you're not in touch with your dream, right? Like you're not, unless your dream's to be a streamer on Twitch or whatever, and you're making $1 million a year, right? Then good for you.
Well, then flip it around. If you're always playing it, then just turn the webcam on and go on stream, because somebody's probably going to want to watch it, right? Like
exactly.
It's incredible. Like, small tangent here, but it's just incredible the opportunities that are out there, and like the people that are captivating on it. Like, when we talk about distractions, like TikTok is like my guilty pleasure, right? Like, it's just like, now I will set up like 15-minute breaks, like after I'm done stuff, be like, oh, I'll go check out what's going on. Just seeing the different creators and stuff that are gone from, like there was a couple guys that were in trades that started streaming because like their jobs shut down. All of a sudden they're like, I'm not going back to that job anymore. I just stream and do like TikTok and make funny videos, and I get paid way more money than I ever did. This is awesome. You people are great. Like the opportunities are endless. But back to the accountability component of it is, you're right. Like, am I going to sit there and lie to somebody? And then as well, you guys, as the rest of the group, go, Gene, you're always on TikTok. So what are you really doing here? Like, why don't you make some while you're on it, or actually go do some real work? Yeah. Now, in case my clients are watching, I do real work. Like, this is.
Yep. Yeah, and by the way, like, just to repeat, if people think what we're describing is a little crazy, that's a fairly structured way to do it. Some people just like to work, right? They I mean, it's still in a virtual co-work environment, but they're just, they're not telling each other what they're doing, and they're not, encouraging people or each other or whatever. That's cool too, right? You just don't want to be alone, and that works. And you made me think of another thing when you brought up TED Talks, in that. Another thing that I really like doing is what I call a study action circle, where when I find people that want to learn a certain topic or go through a certain book, then we, you say it's a marketing book or a self-development book, whatever it is. So then either everyone reads the book, or just one person reads the book, and they break it down. They kind of do a breakdown of it and have little study questions. And depending on how big the book is, it's kind of like a mini mastermind, except it's all based on learning that skill or really implementing that book in your life.
Yeah.
And so let's just say it's 4 sessions, right? So then it's maybe 4 1-hour sessions, and we talk about the chapter, we talk about what it means to you, we talk about the missing pieces, and then by the end of that study action circle, and the reason I call it study action circle is you shouldn't study something without acting, you shouldn't act without studying. That's kind of the idea of the whole thing for me.
Yeah.
Just entertain yourself. And which is fine too, but that's not what I'm talking about now. Anyway, it's great, because as opposed to, that book, that's a good idea, and you're putting sticky notes in it, or maybe it's on your Kindle and you're highlighting this and that, and that's awesome. And then you throw it in the shelf and you pick up another book, right? It's kind of, let's get into this book and let's do it.
Right. Let's get into the depth of it instead of just pouring through it, and actually learning those skills instead of getting that high glossed feel for it.
Yeah, sure. Let's say we're reading a marketing book on how to do a marketing funnel, and yeah, it's a good book, and you're sort of learning how to do it. But then you're reading it by yourself, which of course we don't read it together. If you want
Yeah.
to read it, you can on your own. But then you go, oh, that's awesome. But geez, there's so many page builders out there, and what's the difference between a landing page and a squeeze page? And then do I have to do this and do that? And then you look over, and there's a 22-year-old who goes, what are you talking? What do you want to know? The best one is this, and this is why, and this is the price, and hey, here's my affiliate code.
Yeah.
And you've accelerated, right? And that's why I just love, doing life and work together to a certain extent, anyway.
Right. Well, it kind of seems like it really fits in with your dream, plan, do circle as well. It's just like it's the little mini steps within it is take some action, study it, reflect, learn, do it again, and keep applying, right? And that's how you eventually work all the way back to dreaming, I would assume.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that's that's just kind of what I like doing, and what we've described is fairly kind of the basics of it. But you can go quite deep into it, right? If you're actually doing a turnaround on your company, so that might be worth chatting about for a couple minutes. But for people who are in a company and it's in trouble, I mean, it's the same formula: dream, plan, do. But you really do need a business plan, and you don't. And so basically, you walk people through a complicated business plan for a bank or something like that, where you're kind of raising money or applying for a loan. But then I walk people through like a one-page business plan, and who's on your team and what are they doing, and what do we need to kind of systematically innovate on, and have regular idea sessions and little accountability sessions. And anyway, it's a lot of fun. But what I've learned over the years is there's really almost nothing you can't do. With by yourself, there's lots of things you can't do.
Yeah.
But with other people, I just I just love it.
Well, yeah, it really is like the sky is the limit, right? And when you bring smart people, I'll step that back. When you bring motivated people, or people that are open to trying new things and like working towards something that maybe they're uncomfortable with, and the greatest stuff can happen when they start to build that trust, to that psychological safety starts to go up. Be like, oh, we know we know what we don't know, and we're going to keep trying to figure out what that is. We're going to fail. We're going to keep, but we're moving, and we're doing it together. And everyone's brilliance and genius is bringing a unique perspective to that learning, so they can hone it and do it better the next time.
Yep. And also, even what you walked back a little bit at the beginning, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying smart people, but we're not talking about smart IQ. I mean, we don't have to. I'm talking about someone who's smart, who just says, I'm not going to do it by myself. Like, I'm going to figure this out. That to me, you're smart because you're actively think you've got, that you're here for a reason, and you've got a purpose, or you want to discover your purpose, and you're doing something. So to me, my bar for smart is pretty low. It's just, you want to do something with your life worthwhile, right?
Yeah. And are willing to step into it, right? And that's why I step back from the smart, is like it can really get sucked into the conversation around IQ. Is this? Like, I know a lot of high IQ people that don't actually live up to their potential, right? Like let's talk about the people that are willing to be like, it's sometimes there was the old saying of, C+ students end up being the bosses of A+ students, because they're willing to go try, and they're what's wrong with a little bit of failure and muck around?
No, exactly, which is tying in with what we were talking about with the people that don't discover masterminds. They're smart people because they can figure out. But what you just brought up is the same with athletes, right? The most highly gifted, genetically endowed athletes are rarely up on the gold medal podium because they don't have the work ethic. Not all of them, obviously, but they don't have the work ethic. They are fast enough. They don't like practice, all that kind of stuff. And it's like you said, it's the C students or B students that are running the show most of the time.
Yeah, because they've learned to put the hustle in. For me, one of my things I preach about is just finding one thing, right? So it's like mostly find one thing to push yourself every day. So like, are you a person that's willing to find one thing to push yourself, find one thing to be grateful for, find one thing to be excited about, find one thing to dare to dream, right? Like all those things, like if you can answer that and start to find those things, to me, that means you're taking a step. You're taking just one little step from where you are. And that's probably a good thing. Unless you're super happy and content where you're at, then this doesn't apply to you. But if you're not super content and not super happy and just like, this is I am at the epitome of everything and I am going to stay here. If that's you, sorry, wrong LiveCast. If you are fit in any of those other categories, please listen to all this. This is what that applies to, right?
Yep.
It's just take that step. Take it. It's worth it. Well, Kim, remember at the top of this, before we got started, I said I'd look up and be like, oh my Lord, we're at almost 42 minutes now.
Yep.
So I want to be really appreciative of your time. And I am, Sue, this was a great conversation today. I'm really glad you were able to jump on.
Thank you.
And as I said, we kind of bookend all these with, if you could jump into a time machine and take one piece of advice back, when you open that door, you give it to yourself 10 years earlier, what would that piece of advice have been?
Okay, if I could get in a time machine, once I got through my stock tips, I think I would probably say, and we'll theme it around the dream plan do, I'd say, Kim, my 10-year-old younger self, I'd say you're spending way too much time dreaming and planning. So that's good. You got to keep doing that, but you got to spend way more time doing, because it's a lot easier to figure out what you need to do when you're in it, rather than studying. I'm thinking of starting a business, or I'm thinking of getting a promotion, or I'm thinking of whatever, right? Like, yeah, read it and think about it and watch YouTube videos, and that's all great, but commit to actually doing the thing and you get there a lot faster. So that's the advice I'd give me 10 years ago.
It's more due. What would you, on to that, I'll ask one last question. It's like, what is your recommended, like off your gut, unless you have the right answer, is like, what's your percentage of dream plan do? Like if you were to break that down in, you're a daily or into a week, like how much of each of those should somebody be doing?
It really depends on the stage of what they're at. I mean, dreaming the least, because it depends. If you don't have a dream, we're going to spend lots of time getting that out of you, or you should spend a lot of time getting that out of yourself. But once you've got that, you don't need to spend a lot of time doing it. That's just a reference point. Same with the planning. If you're already going, we just need to update your plan, but it's mostly the doing. So if I had to guess, it's probably the, unfortunately, the Pareto principle gets used too much, but it's probably the 80-20. In fact, I'm going to go away from that and say it's probably, 90-10.
Yeah.
Should just be doing and experimenting and figuring out and just throwing stuff against the wall and working on the most important thing you can do that's related to your dream.
Yeah. Well, that's another, man, there's so many great pieces just in this last one we could keep going on about. I'd love to talk more about understanding in that doing. Maybe we can have another call all around the understanding, working on just the important piece. What's that number one piece you got to take on? So
I'd love to.
Yeah. If you'd be up for that, I'd love to have another conversation just around that.
Sounds great.
Perfect. All right, my friend. Well, that is a wrap. We're at 45 minutes. This has been episode 30 of the LiveCast. Again, thank you, Kim, for being on the show. And we will talk to you all again in the future. Until next Wednesday, this is Gene, the Enjoyment Coach. Find one thing to be grateful for today.